Squid Game Season 3 is the emotional realization of what's left of humanity. This season dives deeper than ever into trauma, guilt, legacy, and resistance. It's not about what the characters would do to survive anymore. It's about what's left of them if they do. Season 3 opens in the wreckage of hope. The rebellion, arguably the bravest act we've seen in the entire series, fails catastrophically. The bodies hanging in the open are a brutal reminder that challenging the system comes with consequences. But the real damage isn't just physical. It's emotional, psychological, and deeply personal. For Gi-hun, who had already been a reluctant hero in Season 1, this failure hits harder than anything before. He didn't just lose allies, he lost his moral compass. His decision to organize and support the rebellion wasn't born from strategic planning or military expertise. It was an emotional, desperate bid to make things right. And when that effort failed, Gi-hun's sense of identity went with it. He can't protect anyone, not even himself. Dae-ho, on the other hand, represents a more relatable kind of fear, cowardness. His betrayal isn't malicious, it's human. When he admits he lied about his military background and backed out of the rebellion, it breaks the illusion of unity. And then there's No-yul, who has to weaponize her own trauma just to survive. Her association with the organ traffickers and later her violent retaliation aren't just tactical moves. They're survival instincts forced by a system that rewards cruelty. The line between victim and perpetrator becomes blurry. The second vote to continue the games forces every player to publicly admit in front of themselves and each other that fear is stronger than hope. And it's incredibly telling that this decision comes after the rebellion. The vote isn't just about the game. It's about how easily hope dies in an environment built on fear. This taps into a painful reality. In authoritarian regimes or abusive systems, the idea of change can feel more dangerous than oppression itself. People stay in toxic jobs, abusive relationships, or under corrupt governments not because they don't know it's wrong, but because the alternative seems even scarier. Because what if resistance makes things worse? What if speaking out means becoming the next body hanging from the rafters? Even the structure of the hide-and-seek game reflects this idea. It's a metaphor for what happens when people in power weaponize the oppressed against each other. Some players become taggers, not necessarily because they want to, but because it gives them power. Myung-gi and Young-sik switching roles to become hunters is the clearest sign of this. The moment they gain authority, they turn on the very people they once stood beside. In doing so, they reinforce the hierarchy that's killing them. It's heartbreaking, but deeply realistic. This is what systems of oppression do best: divide, isolate, and pit victims against each other. It's the age-old tactic of control. But under all of this is something even more painful: guilt. Gi-hun blaming Dae-ho, then himself, then contemplating unaliving himself. This is the logical endpoint of a man who has seen every attempt at doing the right thing blow up in his face. What this opening arc teaches us is simple and devastating. Hope is fragile. In Squid Game Season 3, trauma is the very system that keeps the players in check. It's embedded in every choice, every action, and every breakdown. The show doesn't just show us people suffering. It shows us what happens after the suffering has become a norm. The key shift in this season is that the violence is no longer strictly external. The real damage now comes from within. Players have been so broken down across the previous games that they no longer need to be threatened into compliance. Their memories, guilt, and unresolved pain now controls them. We see this in Min-soo. Under the influence of Thanos' drugs, he hallucinates the people he's lost. He lashes out because he's broken. The drug just makes visible what was already there, a mind haunted by its own past. But perhaps the most tragic and layered case is Myung-gi. His cold, ruthless strategy throughout the season becomes more tragic and more monstrous because he knows he has something to lose. When he sees Jun-hee's newborn baby, he pauses. It's a flicker of humanity. But instead of acting with love, he resorts into what he knows: manipulation, control, and survival. Trauma doesn't make him soft. It makes him sharper, more paranoid, and more brutal. Jun-hee, on the other hand, is the opposite. She literally births life into a space built for death. She gives birth while injured, mid-game, and still protects her baby until the end. Her ultimate act of sacrificing herself to save the child is an act of love so pure that it shames even Myung-gi, who watches her die with the knowledge that he was supposed to protect them both. He failed in every possible way. This dynamic, the broken father, the sacrificial mother, and the innocent child caught in between, is a personal tragedy. Then there's Gi-hun. His trauma has been building since season 1, and here it finally implodes. His decision to kill Dae-ho is not about justice. It's an emotional breaking point of a man who has lost faith in others and especially in himself. What makes Gi-hun's arc so devastating is that he was once the show's moral compass. His trauma has broken that compass to near nothing. And yet, even then, he makes the choice not to betray the others. He carries Jun-hee's baby and refuses In-ho's deal. Finally, he sacrifices himself not to win, but to end the game for someone else. This is the last thing he has to give. In the real world, this reflects something all too familiar. Trauma doesn't just hurt. It alters the way people love, trust, relate, and function. Survivors of war, abuse, or systemic oppression often carry invisible injuries that never quite heal. PTSD, survivor's guilt, and moral injury. The show shows trauma as chaotic, ugly, and confusing. The players are traumatized and acting on instinct. Even the design of the final game reflects this. Sky Squid Game. Players have to physically push others off platforms. An explicit metaphor for how trauma drives people to sacrifice others for their own survival. It's pure distilled ego and desperation. And yet, despite all of this, there are still moments where humanity wins. Gi-hun's protection of the baby, Myung-gi's hesitation to let go of the baby, Jun-hee's sacrifice, and No Yul destroying the records to protect Jang-suk. These aren't solutions. They don't undo the trauma. But they do show that the players, even after everything, still have a choice. Even when the system has weaponized every part of their past, they still get one final say in who they want to be. From the moment the baby is born, Jun-hee's baby becomes the emotional and symbolic core of this season. In a show built around brutality, desperation, and moral collapse, the baby offers a stark contrast. She is vulnerable. She knows nothing of the games. She doesn't even know fear. And that's what makes what happens to her so devastating. Her birth during the chaos of the hide-and-seek game isn't just shocking, it's poetic. A child brought into the world at the exact moment when everything around her is falling apart. While others are killing each other for keys and exits, Jun-hee is pushing life into a space designed for death. That moment is defiant. But that spark of hope is immediately tainted. When the VIPs declare the baby a contestant in the games, the show crosses a moral line. It's a horrific depiction of how innocence is treated in systems of unchecked power. The child is reduced from a human being to a pawn, an asset, a twist for entertainment value. This is dehumanization at its peak. The games have devolved into something even more grotesque. Not just a punishment for debt or weakness, but an arena where even purity can be turned into content. This idea shows how there's real-world systems where children are caught in the crossfire of greed and politics. Refugee crises, child soldiers, kids born into poverty or war zones. Even in supposedly civilized societies, we see governments using children as talking points in immigration debates or cultural wars. The baby becomes everyone's moral test. Gi-hun's reaction is particularly gut-wrenching. Her suicide is not simply about hopelessness. It's a punishment she gives herself. She sees the baby and can't help but remember her own son, Young-sik, which she had to kill to save No Yul. Her plea to the players isn't just about strategy. It's a desperate call for someone, anyone, to prove that there's still humanity left in this place. When no one listens, her decision to hang herself is her surrendering, a final tragic act of grief, because if they won't protect what's innocent, then there's no reason left for her to be there. The baby's presence represents characters who come into contact with her. For Myung-gi, she reflects everything he abandoned. For Jun-hee, she is the ultimate act of defiance and love. For Gi-hun, she is redemption. For the VIPs, she's a toy. And for us, she's the most powerful symbol Squid Game has ever given us. The raw, fragile possibility of a better future. One of the most important things Season 3 does is give us a closer look at In-ho, the frontman. He was once a player himself, and everything he's done since winning the games has been shaped by that experience. This changes how we see him. He's not just some cold mastermind running the show from above. He's someone who went through the same trauma as the current players and ended up helping run the very thing that nearly killed him. His survival came with a cost, and that cost was his own integrity. In-ho offers Gi-hun a deal to kill the other players to make sure the baby survives. Gi-hun's decision to refuse the deal is one of the clearest signs of his growth. He's made a lot of mistakes, but at this point, he knows exactly what kind of person he doesn't want to be. This moment also highlights the difference between the two men. They both came from the same place. They were both players, both pushed to their limits, but they made different choices after surviving. In-ho chose to protect himself and became part of the system. Gi-hun chose to push back against it, even if it meant dying. Season 3 spends a lot of time on this idea of what survival means, not just physically, but morally. In-ho technically won a past game, but his life afterward hasn't looked like a win. He's trapped in a leadership role that keeps him tied to everything he once hated. Even though he's not one of the players anymore, he's still not free. He follows orders, he hides behind a mask, and he justifies it by telling himself that it's necessary. Gi-hun, on the other hand, refuses to justify anything anymore. His choice to not take the deal is simple but important. He doesn't want to be part of something that treats people like numbers. And by refusing, he forces In-ho to take a hard look at what he's become. Later, when In-ho finally steps in to rescue the baby and walk away from the island, it's not framed as some dramatic redemption. It's just a moment of someone realizing they've crossed too many lines and deciding they can't keep going the way they have been. It's a quiet shift. It works because the show doesn't try to excuse anything he's done. It just shows a man trying to change direction, even if it's too late. The season ends with small, quiet moments of healing. Jae-young-suk reunites with his daughter, and No-yul gets news about hers. Woo-suk is released from prison, and Sang-woo's mother and Cheol are finally reunited. Even In-ho finds redemption, rescuing the baby and giving her to Jun-ho along with her winnings. His visit to Gi-hun's daughter is a symbolic passing of the torch, leaving behind both the trauma and the hope. And then we see a recruiter at it again. The games will continue somewhere else. That's the most horrific part. No matter how many resist, how many die, and how many refuse to play, the system will adapt and continue. Squid Game Season 3 is a masterpiece of emotional storytelling layered beneath graphic violence and shocking twists. This season pushes the show into new themes like the weaponization of guilt, the dehumanization of the vulnerable, the moral decay of survival, and the small, human act of choosing empathy over victory. Gi-hun's final sacrifice isn't just for the baby. It's for everyone who came before him. It's for Essa Byok, for Ali, for Jun-hee, and for everyone the system chewed up and spat out. Because in a world designed to break you, losing on your own terms can be the only form of control left. Sometimes, the strongest move isn't to win, it's to refuse to play at all. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.